Imagine a scenario where a football team has a mere 3 days for all its physical and tactical training before a new season, or a tennis player receives a new racket a week before a Grand Slam tournament, with just a day and a half to get accustomed to it. This is essentially what Formula One teams and drivers will face this week, with only 3 days of preseason testing at the Bahrain International Circuit to grasp how their entirely new cars perform in real-world conditions. According to F1 regulations, each team can only have one car on track at any given time during these 3 days, forcing the two drivers to share that single car and reducing their track time to less than 12 hours each. In contrast to a routine football training session, F1 testing generates significant excitement among fans. Although lap times are often inconclusive or even misleading, the lack of track action during the winter makes it tempting to get carried away with observations like Red Bull's speed in the middle sector or Ferrari's lap times dropping significantly after just 10 laps. Here's a guide to understanding what testing involves and how much weight you should give to the headline lap times over the next 3 days in Bahrain. While F1 cars are meticulously engineered and constructed, they also represent 200 miles per hour science experiments ahead of the new season. Despite extensive efforts and expenditures to ensure a new F1 car performs well in simulations during the winter, there's still the potential for unforeseen issues when it hits the track for the first time in reality. As a result, F1 teams undergo a thorough debugging and refining process with their cars before the first race to ensure maximum speed and reliability when the new season kicks off. In the past, this process spanned over 10 days of preseason testing in Spain, but to cut costs, the number of test days has been reduced to just 3, taking place the week before the first race at the same venue. The initial morning of testing typically involves system checks on the car to ensure everything operates as intended. Although teams have advanced test benches at their factories and likely conduct a 200-kilometer shakedown before arriving in Bahrain, running the car all day in the heat of the desert sun provides a unique test. Checks on the cooling system, hydraulic system, and electrical system are crucial early on the first day to identify any potential reliability issues. In race specification, a F1 single-seater carries over 300 sensors, creating up to 90 MB of data per lap. However, during testing, these numbers are even higher to gather as much real-world data as possible. While some sensors on Formula One cars are small and placed under the bodywork to measure temperature, inertia, and loads, those dedicated to understanding a car's aerodynamics are more conspicuous. Metal fences, known as rakes, are attached to the cars behind sensitive airflow areas to measure air pressure and understand flow structures around the car. These rakes consist of a series of pitot tubes, and their readings are compared with the work teams have conducted over the winter in wind tunnels and through CFD, computational fluid dynamics. If real-world data aligns with simulations, a team is closer to unlocking the true potential of the car for the first race. If not, the team faces an uphill battle. Another method for understanding real-world airflow is to apply FlowVis paint to the car and observe how the colorful liquid spreads across the bodywork at speed. This simple method helps engineers determine if aerodynamic surfaces are having the intended impact on airflow. Driver feedback is crucial in understanding a new car. Adjustments often need to be made to simple elements such as the seating position, and long days in the cockpit help identify what is comfortable and what is not. Steering feedback and brake feel are also early aspects to assess, but it may take more than half a season before a driver is entirely satisfied with the finer details. Experienced drivers can assist engineers in understanding where lap time is being lost by describing the car's behavior through corners. Once it's established that the car's fundamentals are functioning as they should, teams shift their focus to setup. Finding the right setup is critical for unlocking performance, and understanding how a car reacts to different ride heights, wing angles, and suspension settings helps engineers develop a toolbox of solutions for various situations later in the season. Engineers spend significant portions of testing experimenting with different setup combinations to determine what works and what doesn't across different fuel loads and tire compounds. Gaining as much knowledge as possible at this stage of the year can pay dividends later in the season when handling issues arise in competitive situations. By the final day of preseason, the aim is to have a reliable car that responds well to setup changes, along with ample data to guide the next steps of car development back at the factory. Lap times displayed on the timing screens rarely provide an accurate picture of the competitive order. A light fuel load and fresh soft tires can make an average car appear faster than the most competitive car on high fuel and used hard tires. Therefore, caution should be exercised when interpreting the order at the end of each day. Teams experiencing difficulties in testing are more apparent, as a lack of mileage is the clearest sign that a new car is struggling, either due to reliability issues or a lack of track time and data to make progress. Assuming the car is reliable, the atmosphere within a team during testing can offer insights into its standing. While engineers and drivers tend to downplay expectations at this time, confidence levels become easier to gauge after a couple of days at the track in the close-knit F1 paddock. Despite potentially misleading fastest times during testing, it's still possible to piece together a vague picture of who is quick and who is not by delving deeper into available data. Recognizing patterns in lap times allows for a better understanding of the true situation and making predictions about which team has made the most significant performance gains over the winter. Certain laps during testing are aimed at gaining a better understanding of the car's performance over a single lap. These laps are recognizable as drivers alternate between hot laps and cool-down laps, creating a distinctive pattern of fast, slow on the timing screens. Drivers must intersperse fast laps with slower ones to allow the tires to recover after being pushed hard on the previous lap and to recharge the hybrid system's battery, which depletes most of its power during a qualifying-style lap. Tire compounds play a vital role in one-lap performance, with Pirelli offering all 5 of its compounds to teams during testing, labeled C1 to C5, from hardest to softest. Softer rubber provides more performance but is less durable, meaning the softest compound might be suitable for only a single lap before losing its peak performance. While the fastest times in testing are usually set on the softest tires, if a car using harder compounds is only slightly slower than a car on the softest tires, it suggests the car on the harder compound has an underlying pace advantage. Temperatures fluctuate throughout the day, and Bahrain offers optimal track conditions once the sun has set and the tarmac has cooled. Thus, a time set on the softest tires in the midday sun is not comparable to a time set on the same compound under the floodlights later in the day. These factors need consideration when analyzing the fastest laps each day. Even with knowledge of the tire compound and the time of day the lap was set, which are publicly available, only half the story is known. A car's fuel load significantly influences performance, with an additional 10 kilograms adding roughly 0.3 seconds of lap time. In other words, a car with a full tank at the Bahrain International Circuit will be over 3.5 seconds per lap slower than a car running on fumes. Most teams typically run a fuel load somewhere in between, as running on a full tank would damage the tires after a few laps, and running on qualifying amounts of fuel would require more pit stops for refueling. Knowing how much fuel a car carries is impossible from the outside, as teams are not obligated to disclose this information. Therefore, the most impressive lap time in testing might be set by a team running with 40 kilograms of fuel in the tank, while a fundamentally slower car can appear surprisingly competitive with 20 kilograms or less. Loading the car with fuel during testing is often referred to as sandbagging. F1 speak for a team intentionally hiding its performance. However, a fuel load between 60 kilograms and 30 kilograms offers a more practical baseline for understanding car performance over a run of a sensible length. Unfortunately, the most effective tool for cutting through secrecy and making sense of lap times, monitoring GPS traces of rival cars for data on corner speeds and straight-line speed, is not available to fans and the media. This allows teams to build a clearer picture of true car performance by understanding the speed at which a car accelerates and brakes, guesstimating engine mode and fuel load. With a click of a mouse, this data can be cross-referenced with previous year's test sessions or races to identify trends and anomalies. F1 teams, being creatures of habit, often stick with a set fuel load for testing from one year to the next. As staff move between teams over seasons, experienced engineers can quickly amass a bank of data and knowledge to help sift through the times on the timing screens and identify the true star performers. One way to eliminate uncertainty over fuel loads is to look for teams attempting race simulations. Ideally, most teams aim to complete a race simulation by the end of the 3 days to understand how the car performs over a Grand Prix distance and gather data for the first race a week later. To complete a race distance without refueling, cars need to leave the pits with close to the maximum fuel load of 110 kilograms. Once it is known that cars start with the same fuel load to complete the same laps, it becomes much easier to compare performance. Although not an exact science due to factors like the time of day, track conditions, engine modes, and tire strategies, race simulations offer a more accurate baseline for comparing performance by removing some questions about fuel load. Race sims are usually recognizable by slow but steady lap times over long runs interspersed with race-style pit stops where the pit crew practices tire changes as in a real race. If a driver's pit board counts down from 57 laps, the length of a Grand Prix in Bahrain, the team is likely attempting a race sim. Calculating an average lap time from each driver's race sim provides the best indication of how quick a car truly is over a lap compared to its rivals. However, because race simulations are typically among the last tasks on a team's schedule, it's possible that teams might not fit them into the 3-day schedule. In such cases, comparing cars like-for-like returns to estimating fuel loads. Although some order usually emerges from testing, it doesn't always accurately represent the situation for the first race. This year, with the sole preseason test and the first race both held at Bahrain, the chances of an accurate prediction are improved. Nevertheless, much can change within a week. Teams aim for rapid development at the start of a new season as they gain an on-track understanding of their cars, comparing it with simulation data. A car that initially performs slowly might be a few setup changes away from unlocking significantly more pace, with the key to that performance potentially revealing itself only after thorough data analysis at the end of testing. Teams will use the data gathered over the 3 days to refine their setups in driver-in-loop simulators back at their factories. Additionally, the cars seen in testing might appear surprisingly basic or underdeveloped by the end of the year. For larger teams, some updates may be introduced as early as the first race of the season, and it's not uncommon for performance to be enhanced by an upgrade between testing and the first event on the Formula One calendar.